generous and flattering introduction that in fact ignored a few of the realities, if I may say so. I've been guilty of committing most of the original sins of commerce in my 40 plus year business career. I've been guilty of understaffing, overgearing. I've failed to delegate. I've gone on many occasions to lunch at about midday and not returned till midnight. I've abused health inspectors and other bureaucrats that come and try and tell us how to run our business. And most shamefully, I've sort of blamed staff instead of training them. And there are probably lots of other things that I wouldn't admit to. But however, like everyone in this room, I've been a survivor in the business world. And in that, one should never ever, in my view, underestimate the role that luck plays in sport, in business, and in life generally. But we, as you have, we have survived and prospered. However, I do believe that the current business environment is, without a doubt, the toughest of the 40 plus years that I've been in business. Throughout the second half of the 70s, all through the 80s, into the early 90s, we were all and were constantly told that the absolute bogey of economic well-being for our country was inflation. We were told that often, that I certainly believed it, and I think, in my view, we were all sucked in. I and many in this room would have prospered significantly from that prolonged period of economic inflation. Business generally had year-on-year growth on sales, and for those as old as I am, you would remember that period of time where every year the sales were better than the year before. People's incomes were increasing at a much greater rate than they do now, and they were spending more and more. One of the real values of inflation to people like myself, and I'm sure many in this room, that inflation actually dissolved the impact. It reduced the impact of our debt. Inflation was paying our debt off for us. And it was certainly more than compensating us for the double-digit interest rates that prevailed in those times, as in contrast to presently. But unlike now, uncontrollable costs, including the cost of our energy that seems to be rising constantly, government services have gone up at above the rate of inflation. You know, let's say the average rate in recent years has been 2%. I would imagine for all of us in this room, our council rates, our emergency services levy, and all of the things that we can't control but are directed by governments have gone up at a rate that for most of us we can't recover via price increases. In recent years, as I said, energy in particular, and taxes, emergency services levy, just the ever-increasing burden of red tape has meant that our costs have gone up at a greater rate than we have been able to achieve either through sales growth or price margin increase. So what happens when that is the case? Invariably, it has to impact on our bottom line for every one of us. And for, I would imagine, nearly everyone in this room, of all the varying types of businesses that you're in, for most of us, the value of our business is not tied to anything else anywhere near as much as it's tied to as a multiple of our earnings. So therefore, if our earnings go down, invariably the our equity in our business goes down. So it hasn't been good times. I say bring back a period of inflation. I'd love it. But I also counsel you not to get sucked into believing what our Prime Minister is constantly telling us, or constantly for the last 52 weeks that he's been there. And that is, he's telling us that there has never ever been a more exciting time to be an Australian. Cool. Look, exciting. What exciting is what excited is what kids are excited on Christmas Eve about Santa Claus coming. I was extremely excited at the football on Saturday night when the Crows were walloping the Kangaroos. And for some of us are lucky enough to get excited in the bedroom sometimes. But I don't want to be excited by the political scene. I just want the government that we have to create an environment where we can invest in our businesses with confidence. But I'll change from that note of negativity. As Nick alluded, I've been fortunate enough to have exposure to lots of different businesses by being invited to join the boards of those various organisations. As he said, the Tourism Commission, Tourism Australia, the national broadcaster for 5 years, and indeed, I don't think he did mention, but the most important organisation in the state, which was probably deliberate on his part, I would say, but he failed to mention that I was for 14 years a member of the board of the Adelaide Football Club, and more recently of the Stadium Management Authority. Now, I could bore you for the next 15 minutes on all the things that, or some of the things that are wrong with the ABC, but I won't. I think Nick suggested that you would be much more interested, and I'm probably happier talking about where in life for an Australian business and sport intersects. Specifically Aussie rules footy. The principles for achieving success in sport and in business are very similar. As in business, a football club must recruit good people, but in football, both on and off the field. As in business, luck and timing, which I think I mentioned a few moments ago, play a huge part. Now, you may recall that each of the three years that Brisbane won the flag, in the months of September, Lee Matthews had a full list to choose from in all 3 of those years. So luck has a lot to do with it. And in football, obviously the money flows better when there is on-ground success because the crowds turn up. But like in sport, as in business, you need a good board. A board with a balance of skills. Footy fans and football club members seem to have an insatiable appetite for having former champion footballers on their board. Now, Mark Jackson was a pretty good footballer, but I think everyone in the room would agree you wouldn't want a board table surrounded by replicas of Mark Jackson. But having a solid footy history combined with real strategic capability is a vitally important component of a balanced board in football. My mate Mark Rasciuto has without a doubt been a classic example of that. It's well known to everyone in Australia, everyone in South Australia and most people in Australia that Roo was both a brilliant and a very tough footballer. But what is certainly much less known is that he has also got a very elite business brain. He's quite extraordinary focus and a great reader of people and a very strong sense of strategic planning. One should never underestimate his influence in articulating to the board of the Adelaide Football Club why it was important that Brenton Sanderson had to be moved on. It was Mark that in not one visit but in a couple of visits convinced Phil Walsh to move from Alberton across Port Road down to West Lakes. And it was certainly he that identified the tactical excellence of our current coach, Don Pike. Roo also chairs the List Management Committee at the Adelaide Football Club, where again he uses that business strategic capability to add some intellectual rigour to that facet of managing the business of football for Adelaide. Having said that, no board table needs a full table of ex-footballers. It needs diversity. That diversity should include women, but not women for the sake just of gender balance. Women appointed on merit. And there'll be plenty of women that will earn positions around board tables, including football club boards, on that basis. The Adelaide Football Club, in my view, should have many years ago appointed June Roach to its board. We didn't, and it was a mistake. The South Australian National Football League Commission appointed June as a commissioner about 3 or 4 years ago, and as their first ever woman on the SANFL Commission, and full marks to them. Her footy career, her footy pedigree should I say, and her business career are without peer. Her maiden name is Blight, and yes, she's the sister of, from the Adelaide Footy Club point of view, the Messiah himself. And the last 15, probably 20 years of her career has been as the CEO of the Lotteries Commission. A great appointment for the SANFL. So you can deduce from those comments that even if you fancy yourself as having a fairly strong voice around a board table, you don't always get your own way. But I've served on boards of various sporting and other boards with some brilliant women. Janet Albrechtson was on the board of the ABC for the 5 years that I was there, an absolute genius. Nikki Downer was on the board of the South Australian Tourism Commission all the time I was there, outstanding around a board table. Kate Lamont, a dear friend of mine from Perth, was on the Tourism Australia board and I think became chair or deputy chair of Tourism Australia. Outstanding people, and that's just to mention 3 of many that I've worked with. But boards, both football and business, need balance. Strong financial skills. You need it in business, you need it in sport. Good creative marketing skills are absolutely invaluable. People of either gender that are well connected in political circles, in business circles, and in the media are an absolute must. But to have those networking skills around your table is the way that a sporting club generates where the big bucks come from in sponsorship. And it's no different. Having an association with sport, which I have no doubt there's many people in this room do, is good for your business. It's been good for my business. A person that I got to know through my involvement with the Adelaide Football Club recently swapped his booze buying from another retailer to us, and he spends about 100 grand a year. So whether it's in community football or in that case the bigger league, if I may call it that, it's good for your business, and it's stimulating. You have to have, I always say, you need people involved with your sporting club who know the people that have got the gold fountain pens and the gold credit cards, because they are the ones that will drive your sponsorship. Any business, including a sporting club, needs to have a solid chair that knows how to run meetings tightly and is a skilled communicator. But just in closing, I will make reference to the Adelaide Oval, which has obviously sporting connotations, but is a South Australian gem asset really. And I've been fortunate enough to have an insight into the workings of the Adelaide Oval from the inside, for a want of a better way of expressing it. It's now operated in a very complex partnership between the South Australian National Football League and the South Australian Cricket Association, who have for many years have been traditional foes. It's not too much to say, but they now work together very effectively for the benefit of the entire state. I was appointed not as a member of either of those organisations, but as an independent board member. Adelaide Oval deals with two very powerful stakeholders in the two AFL clubs, and they are what obviously attract the biggest crowds, generate the biggest dollars, but they also come to the Oval, so to speak, with high expectations in terms of their share of the dollars. One of those deals where everybody wanted to be better off. Saka would have never done the deal unless they thought there was more money for them. The SANFL, they had the right to host AFL football. They weren't going to shift from their own ground down at West Lakes up there unless they could see that there was more money for them, which flows through to community football, including this region. And neither of or particularly the Adelaide Football Club, didn't want to move unless there was substantial financial uplift for them also. It is the largest food and beverage business in the state. It's the largest function centre in the state. It's the largest concert venue in the state. And I'll just make a couple of observations. Make no mistake, John Olsen is an outstanding chair of that organisation. It was quite extraordinary that they were able to recruit Andrew Daniels as the CEO. I'd known Andrew for a long time, but hadn't worked with him for over 20 years. He's developed into one of the star CEOs of South Australia. And the ground management people, the finance people, and the senior food and beverage people are all stars. Ladies and gentlemen, with that closing comment, I thank you for the opportunity to come down today and just share a few of my thoughts with you, and I wish you all the best for the rest of your week and in your own businesses, and I'm sure I join you in hoping for a more vibrant business environment for us all to operate in. Thank you.